Now it's time to talk to our good friend, Dr. Dennis Norem, about all the latest in COVID-19 and coronavirus news. Doctor, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, Joe. I'm down here in Tucson, and finally it's not hitting 100 degrees any longer.
Congratulations. Everything else good out there? Weather? You still getting the smoke from the fires rolling through, or how are things looking?
No, that's pretty well gone now. Apparently with the wind shifts and things, we're not seeing that smoke coming from California much any longer, so that's good news.
Very, very good. All right. So now with Ryle's not here, you and I, we can really get to the bottom of this. Without him, he talks a lot. So we'll pass the mic to you. You can do the heavy lifting here. We got cases around, not only here in the country. We just heard Whitney Martin talk about our numbers in the region are going up. It's not just a United States problem right now; it's global. Just up from CNN right now. German cases on the rise. England rolling out new lockdown rules. Czech Republic imposes new restrictions. Latin America and the Caribbean top 10 million cases. In France adds more cities to its maximum alert list. Should we be expecting more stuff like that rolling out here in the States? I know we tried last or 2 weeks ago, didn't with some serious pushback. But is this? Do we have is this second wave going to be hitting us pretty soon?
It appears that that's the case. Clearly in Europe, we're seeing the second wave there. Things have really calmed down, and now things are really heating up again. And unfortunately, a lot of this, I think, is that idea of pandemic fatigue. You know, people are thinking, well, things are better. We'll let down our guard a little bit. And I saw another interesting comment by, I think it's Deborah Burks from who had been on
the task force.
Panel. She made the comment that it looks like the spreading now is occurring not so much at work, public places, because we've stopped the large meetings and things, but it's just people getting together in their own home. People let their guard down, and now they're getting together with family and friends, and we're seeing spread in that context of the home. And I think we just have to look north to our neighbors in Wisconsin. They're getting absolutely hammered with their coronavirus rate. And I think part of that was that they just were not doing the kinds of things that need to be done. I was up to Wisconsin a couple times, up to my son's lake cabin, and you would go to a restaurant. Nobody was wearing masks. Nobody was social distancing. And we know us Del Illinois guys would have our masks on, and we got to the point where we didn't even do any sit-down meals any longer. We would just do carry-outs, and because we knew that at some point that was going to catch up with them.
Yeah, I just spent in my week off, also up to Wisconsin for a little bit, took a trip out to west to Oklahoma to see my sister. And same thing going on out there. We didn't eat inside any restaurants because not taking the social distancing and masking nearly as seriously as we are over here. Right or wrong, but their numbers are definitely getting out ahead of us. There's a thought right now that if you catch coronavirus today, you're in a much better place than if you had caught the coronavirus a month ago. Do you, as a doctor in the medical community, agree with that?
I think things are much more likely that you're going to be treated and recover. The combination of the remdesivir, the antiviral, the steroids, the anticoagulants, and now we have the monoclonal antibody, although that therapy is very limited in terms of who can get that, because that's still early investigational drug. Obviously, the president got it, and it may have been more effective in his situation, but it's hard to know. But yes, I think it's clear that people who get the coronavirus now certainly are much better off than 3 or 4 months ago, and maybe even in the last month, as some of these therapies have become more available.
Now, the fact that we can treat it better, at least in the early stages of coronavirus, we still obviously don't know long term, right? I mean, that's still up in the air.
Yes, the long-term consequences, we just don't have enough time under our belt. What are we looking at? Essentially 6 months. So the long-term consequences, especially the consequences on the lungs, just not clear, although there is some early evidence that most people probably will recover in terms of their lung function, but you just don't know yet.
The fact that it does seem to be, I don't want to say more treatable, but or is less severe the right word to use? When saying if somebody catches coronavirus right now, it's less likely to be a severe case?
I think that it's not clear that it's less likely to be a severe case. It's a more treatable case. So I guess if you look at the end result, maybe less severe. But the problem with the coronavirus is that people who get very sick with it get sick very quickly. And the people who are ultimately going to die, many of them die very quickly. The treatments just are not effective at all early on in some of these patients. So that still needs to be, I think, worked out. And I think people need to understand that, yes, treatment is better, but prevention is still our priority.
Because I definitely think that's, that's a train of thought that's going through a lot of people's heads right now, is that this is probably not going to kill me. We'll try to keep Grandma and Grandpa away from it. It's probably going to be fine. But I think a lot of people right now have the thought, if I get it, I get it. I'll probably be okay. And that's just going to spread it more, correct?
Well, then people let their guard down, as we've seen. We're all kind of fatigued about this.
Absolutely.
We're looking forward to holidays are coming, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. Those are big social gathering times for people in their homes. And what are we going to be doing? Are we going to have large family gatherings thinking, well, things are better? Yeah, the family, we're not at risk here. I think that's a huge concern. And just in terms of the overall pandemic, we are clearly, I think, heading into the second wave for most of us. And that's just the way pandemics are. So there's some clouds on the horizon here in terms of what can happen.
You mentioned one of them, but with the president catching it, the words dexamethasone and remdesivir and Regeneron have popped up a lot as possible cure.
Is the manufacturer of the monoclonal antibody. So they've been able to take the human antibody and make a copy of it in the lab and make that as a treatment. And that treatment chemistry has been around for certainly other diseases, but not for viruses until now. And apparently Eli Lilly, I think that's the other company, is also doing monoclonal antibody research, and it's fascinating and has huge potentials for people in terms of treatment. Obviously, the antiviral remdesivir we've heard a lot about. And dexamethasone is an old drug that's been around for years, but it has been found to be very effective for people who are hospitalized because it stops that hyperimmune response that they talk about, where people will suddenly get very sick because they overreact to the virus, their own system. And it's a very inexpensive drug, fortunately, so dexamethasone has really been very helpful.
So dexamethasone, it sounds like it could be available to everybody. The remdesivir, the Regeneron, how far away are we, as far as you know, for that being available to anybody that wants it or needs it?
I think remdesivir is pretty standard treatment now in the hospital. So I think it's fairly available, depending on the area of the country that you're in. The monoclonal antibody, I saw a little blurb. They were interviewing the head of the Regeneron company, and it's probably not going to be readily available for several months under compassionate use criteria. Some people will be able to get it, but I don't think it's going to be readily available probably until sometime after the first year when they're able to crank up their production and the other company can get their production up a little higher. Plus, they have to complete their studies. They're still in early stage studies, which is always a concern because side effects can pop up.
There's talk around here, a lot of places about possibly shutting schools down, just going remote sometime early November, basically avoiding flu season all the way through probably January. Is that something you would recommend? Would you want to see if you had still kids in school? Would you want them to shut down for flu season, or is that causing more problems than it's worth?
I've been a real advocate of getting the schools open. I understand the concerns about the ability to be able to keep the schools safe, but I think we really need to push forward if we can. And again, one size does not fit all. Clearly, there are areas of the country that schools can be open and function well, as long as people are doing the proper measures at school, and people are being checked and the kids are being checked. You can, I think, do it in a reasonable manner. And if you have a outbreak or you have a case within a class, then yeah, you may need to shut that class down for a while and do remote. But I think this idea we should shut all the schools down is detrimental. The kids need to get back in school.
When you say kids getting checked, are you talking about just temperature checks and things like that? Are we talking about more testing throughout the schools?
If possible, more testing. That may or may not be feasible, but I think with some of these new rapid tests coming along, hopefully that will become more feasible, especially the less expensive tests. There's a company, I think, that's doing a rapid test that's just a paper that you just have to kind of stick in the mouth. And hopefully we can get to the point where we can get a reliable rapid test. Having said that, though, obviously the social distancing, the issues, the idea of keeping kids in a pod so they're not exposed to other classes and things can be done. And I think it can be managed in a reasonable way to keep kids relatively safe. So I think we need to push forward. Now, obviously, there are going to be areas in schools and areas of the country where that's not going to be feasible. The rates are going to be too high. Too many people are going to be infected. You're going to have to shut those schools down for a while.
I've been out of the loop for a week, and I know when I left, the rapid testing, the saliva-based test, I think it was 15-minute return was the promise on that, was talked about being rolled out here in the Rockford area. Has that happened? Is it if I roll up to any of these mobile testing sites, is that what I'm getting, or am I still going to get the swab in the nose? It takes about a week for you to find out your results.
I believe the saliva testing is about a 3 or 4 hour turnaround time. Okay. And it was being done through the University of Illinois College of Medicine. I don't believe they've rolled it out quite yet. They have a few more issues of getting geared up for production, and they're working on obtaining contracts with local healthcare providers to provide the test. So I don't believe it's available quite yet, although I haven't checked myself in the last week.
The new paper test that you were just talking about earlier, is that, if the medical community got to pick which one that they got to use, is that the one better than the saliva test we're rolling out? Which one would you guys rather have?
Well, I'd rather have the most accurate, easiest to use, cheapest, and fastest. That remains to be seen with these mobile tests. So I think at the end of the day, something that has a short turnaround time, but one that's fairly sensitive and accurate. In other words, the rapid tests, as you know, tend not to be as sensitive. There's a lot of false negatives. Hopefully that will improve with time. The swab test is still the gold standard. It's the most reliable. So you kind of run into that dilemma of, well, yeah, you'd like a inexpensive, cheap rapid test, but it's not real good if half the time it doesn't pick up the disease. So at this point, I think there's options and choices that, depending on the circumstance, you want to have different tests available.
It seems like every week we get a new test that's popping up. I mean, do you think, if you had bet $50, will next week when you join us, will we be talking about a new test on the horizon, or will we be fine tuning the ones we have now?
I think that there's possibility of new tests coming along for this virus. people are looking at all kinds of options, trying to make it faster, cheaper, more accurate. So we could be talking about some other kind of new test. I'm not sure what that would be, but it's certainly possible.
And then one more question before we let you go here. When we first started this, we were wiping down our groceries and sanitizing everything we touched, and then we were telling, well, you don't really have to do that. It's mostly spread through, airborne particles. Just reading a story, I think yesterday, where somebody was touting that, oh, by the way, it can still live on boxes for 28 days. Is it still is it still living there, but not necessarily transmittable? Is that the deal? Do we need to start worrying about touching our groceries again, or are we still basically airborne transmission?
It's still the airborne issues. I think we have to be a little careful with surfaces, washing your hands and being a little bit conscious of that. However, it's still airborne. The fact that the virus is sitting around there for 28 days, it appears that after a short period of time, probably a few minutes in most cases, and maybe an hour or less, the virus probably can't transmit infection off those surfaces.
All right. Before we let you go, anything you want to share with our listeners about being safe?
Well, back to wear those masks, social distance, and as we approach the holidays, use some common sense about family get-togethers. Again, that seems to be where we're seeing a lot of the spread now, are in the small family groups.
Common sense and the general public is a big ask, but we'll see what we can do for you, all right?
All righty, Joe.
All right. Have fun out in Arizona. Go find a nice taco truck or something like that. I hear they have them out there.
Oh, yeah, they do. Great tacos out here.
All right.
All right.
That's Dr. Norem, live from Arizona.